Today we're going to be reviewing a few films, including Passengers and La La Land, as well as look at some of the films coming out this week. And then we're also going to be taking a look at some of our most anticipated television shows coming out this spring, so stay tuned.
Welcome to The Real Review.
Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of film and television. I am here with Matt Hey, and I am...
And I am here with Joel Fergalicious Cunningham.
Fergalicious. Oh, I'm not a Black Eyed Peas fan.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm even less of one now. Well, we are so excited to be here today, guys, and do this podcast with you. We have now officially launched the podcast. So this is our first podcast we're bringing to you after our official launch.
Yay!
Yeah, super awesome. And we wanted to, as well, just get started out with something that everybody should be really excited about, which is talking about the contest that we're running here with the podcast. And so, as we've told you, we're going to be giving away a $50, or you might not know, we're giving away a $50 gift card to a movie theater. And so how do people sign up for that, Matt?
So essentially, it's going to be a number of different ways. Obviously, subscribe to the podcast. You're also going to be able to subscribe to our newsletter. We'll have links for you as well. Mm-hmm. And give us a good rating, obviously. And if it's a bad rating, then we don't need to hear from you. It's okay.
Yeah, so subscribe, like us on this iTunes app, podcast app here, and then go ahead. Well, more than like us, give us a review if you can, a positive review if you can. And then if you can, shoot us an email. Let us know that you signed up for it. Our email address is realreviewmedia@gmail.com. Real is spelled R-E-E-L, like film reel.
Get it?
Yeah. So realreviewmedia@gmail.com after you've subscribed and left us a hopefully positive review there. And we will get you signed up for the contest, which we're going to be doing all throughout the month of January. Then at the end of January, we're going to pull a name out of an email hat. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, a digital email hat.
There's got to be an app.
It's probably a digital email top hat of sorts, yes.
If there isn't an app, we just created one.
Yes. Package it, ship it,
awesome.
Trademark.
Yeah. So let's get going here. Why don't we get right into the films we're going to be talking about today for our review segment. So Matt and I, we had a chance to watch a film recently together, which is a rarity a bit for us.
Right.
And what film was that, Matt?
It was Passengers, starring Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah. And so this was a film made by Morton Tildum. And it actually, like you said, starred Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt. And it was an interesting film for me, Matt. Did you have any just like kind of gut reaction take on the film?
Yeah, I guess my initial reaction was, that wasn't as bad as I thought as I thought I was going to be.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it was the fact that my feelings towards the movie and my anticipation for it was very, very low.
Yeah, this had a Rotten Tomato score last time I checked by critics of about 32%.
Right.
Yeah, but fans had it at about, I think, 70%.
Okay, so that falls maybe more in line with what I was feeling then.
Yeah, so this is one of the reasons why we love doing what we do on the show, which is we're not paid critics. We're not watching a film a day and paid to do critical analysis maybe one day. But at this point, we're just doing this as fans of film and media. And so this was a side where we kind of are looking at the perspective of, I think, more the fan. Right. And not looking at it from a critical perspective. We kind of side more with the fan perspective. So I agree. I thought it was a pretty good film overall. I think there was definitely elements that I can understand why a critic would look at and say, maybe not a great film. It had the tendency to be kind of obvious.
Right.
You kind of knew where the story was going to be going from the beginning all the way to the end. And
very predictable.
Very predictable.
Yep.
But I would say the acting was good.
Yeah.
The special effects were really good at times.
Visually, I was actually in awe a couple times. I was like, this is really cool looking.
Yeah, really cool looking. I think the score didn't really do too much for me. I think overall it felt like it fit, kind of did
not
a decent
memorable
enough job.
Or anything.
Yeah, and so one of the things that was actually interesting about this film, which Morton Tildum is actually the director of a bunch of other films, but he did one recently called The Imitation Game.
Yeah.
And that film had it felt like a different visual style in a way. This was a sci-fi film. Obviously, it's based in space, and kind of the main idea of the film is that there's this guy, played by Chris Pratt, named Jim, and they're on this trip, this like cruise liner spaceship, and they're going to this other planet where they're going to sort of populate it with people. And it's not like a scenario where, the catastrophic Earth is destroying itself and we have to send people. This is a choice that people made.
Right.
And they actually can buy themselves a ticket onto the ship.
Very expensive.
Very expensive, right. And so it was interesting. I think it played a little bit of a cool dynamic between like the different classes of people at time, which it's like, if this scenario played out in modern times, how that might actually go was similar to what I think they portrayed. And so Jim here is in the spaceship and they're on their way there. It's going to take over 100 years basically to get to the new planet. And he wakes up.
Right.
And the problem with waking up is that he wakes up about 90 years too soon. And so basically at this point, I think in the movie, he's probably like in his early 30s or maybe late 20s or so. And he's going to basically pass away before they get to the space, the planet.
Right.
So he has to decide, what am I going to do here? First of all, how do I keep myself entertained? And second of all, he eventually figures out this way in which he can unlock another person and wake them up.
Right.
Right. And so Jennifer Lawrence happens to be that person. So he makes a really interesting call and, has to go in a certain direction. I don't want to spoil too much here for the fans that, haven't necessarily seen the film or anything like that. But I felt like all the ways that there was actually explained in the story of the decision that he made there made logical sense. I think if you're stuck on a spaceship by yourself and you have the opportunity to wake somebody up.
It's that Castaway kind of thing too. Like, desperate for somebody to communicate and actually have, conversation with and interact with.
And they put it in a logical way. I mean, he does everything he can possible to try and remedy the situation. He tries to contact, the Earth, and it basically he's prevented from doing that because the amount of time that's going to take to do that. He tries to wake up one of the crew members, but he can't get in to actually do that. So, I mean, he does everything he can, I think, logically. And I think the one fault that you definitely could say is that he took a choice that it wasn't like he just wanted somebody to talk to. He definitely wanted to talk to Jennifer Lawrence because, hey, I think you're hot, and I really enjoy listening to these weird videos of you. It's almost stalkerish way that he's like investigating her. So,
one thing I really appreciated about this, the actors were invested. I think when you have a caliber of actors and actresses such as like Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt, especially with the kind of work they've been doing lately, they're just, they're legit movie stars.
Yeah.
And you get something like this, I think there's that potential for them to potentially like phone it in, and they're not trying.
Yeah.
They were trying, and it showed. I thought it was done really well. There's a couple of moments where like, you see sheer horror on Jennifer Lawrence's face. And I was like, I feel that. Also, Chris Pratt, it was a little out of his box as well. I think I've seen a little bit more depth in this film than I have in anything else he's done.
Yeah, I mean, the first 3/4 of the movie almost functions more as like a straight up drama.
Right. And it's not like a typical, hey, I'm funny and I'm a very masculine kind of macho guy. There's a lot of like, you see him wearing a lot of insecurity in his character. And I haven't seen that before. And he doesn't know what to do. And you see him distressed, and you see him like doing these things that you haven't seen Chris Pratt do. Yeah. I think that was really refreshing. I'm glad he ended up on this project because I wanted to see something different from him. It was good.
Yeah, I agree. So the one thing I was going to say, and this is kind of what I was trying to get to earlier, was this whole idea of some of the cinematography. I felt there was a couple scenes where it approached almost melodrama, in my opinion, and then additionally there was a couple moments where it almost came across as a little silly and a little goofy.
Right.
And I think a lot of that just had to do with kind of the style that they chose in order to film some of these things. So, I mean, specifically the part with like the robot guy who goes a little crazy. I mean, I think people in the theater were actually laughing.
Like, what is happening?
What is that? It just looked really kind of goofy at times. And so there's moments like that you definitely have to get past in the movie, and you have to be willing to kind of like put that aside and go, okay, well, maybe this isn't, it's a little melodramatic for my taste or something like that. But the overall story I felt like is good. It was interesting the way that the characters played it out, and I felt like they did good with each other. There was good natural chemistry between the two of them, and I generally felt a sense of suspense and kind of intrigue as to, how's this going to turn out? Where's this going to go?
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. So any last thoughts on Passengers, Matt?
No, I mean, it was really straightforward, really predictable, but definitely a lot better than what I feel like it has rating on, at least from a Rotten Tomatoes standpoint.
Absolutely. So on a scale of, 1 to 100 or whatever, how do you want to rate this guy?
I'll give it let's do a C+, 78.
Very cool. Yeah. I would give it probably C+ as well.
Nice.
So yeah, definitely check it out. All right. So that is all for our conversation and review on Passengers. Matt, what do we have next?
Next, we have a little movie known as La La Land.
A small movie.
Right.
Have you heard of it?
Yeah. So this came out recently, but it was written and directed both by Damien Chazelle and stars Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. Now, essentially, this movie, it's kind of like a love story, but it's a musical, right? So it's an aspiring jazz musician.
Yeah.
Essentially falls for an aspiring actress, both. And that's really where the movie comes in. It's about two dreamers falling in love with each other and how that really plays into their dreams and what they want to do and what and how that comes about. Now, this movie, I'm not a huge musical person. Don't know your thoughts on it, but
I can be.
You can be?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't necessarily like all the same musicals that are critic favorites, but I do like some musicals. Yeah.
Right. So I'm not a huge musical person. So I went into this, prepared to, not like the film overall, I guess.
Okay.
Again, maybe just a tempered expectations, I guess. And I went in and really found myself enjoying it. It's filmed in a way that makes you think that it feels like a 60s, 70s era film, but in present day. Okay. There were times in which I was like, wait, what time period does this movie take place in? I was like legit confused. And then I was like, all right, she drives a Prius. So
gotcha.
Obviously it's current day, but.
So it's like the Napoleon Dynamite of musicals.
Kind of. It's almost, and here's the thing. Ultimately, it's almost like Damien Chazelle's love letter to like old school Hollywood.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of what it felt like. But I really came out enjoying it. I really was able to resonate with the dream aspect of it. And there's a lot of real conversations in this. Aside from it being funnier than I thought it would be, there's some real conversations in this that I was like, wow, I feel like I've had those conversations before. I feel like I've felt this way before. And it really hit all of the right notes as far as that's concerned. So I was pleasantly surprised. So you haven't had a chance to see this film. What are your initial just kind of thoughts towards it?
Well, I think I've heard a lot of similar thoughts to yours. I think the biggest thing that I keep hearing over and over again is it's kind of like a love song to Hollywood. I mean, the film's called, La La Land,
right.
A term for Hollywood. And so I'm interested to see it because I do want to see how he's kind of intertwined sort of that older element and older style of kind of the musical with sort of the modern day sensibilities. And I've heard a bit that this film is kind of actually almost like two different musicals. Like about halfway through or so, I've heard that it kind of like splits into almost an entirely different type of movie for a little while. And it takes on sort of this darker, more kind of dramatic tone, which I haven't seen it. I can't speak for that. But I do think that, Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone are usually a very good, couple.
Yeah.
A very good pair. And I'm enjoying how Emma Stone has been moving more towards kind of the more dramatic roles.
Right.
And really kind of, I think she took these roles that were kind of available to her and kind of like Zombieland and Easy A, and those were good films, but they're not necessarily like critically thought of as like being the best films ever. They're more comedies, which generally critics don't tend to like comedies quite as much for some reason. Although they did do really well ratings wise. But so she's getting into these kind of more serious roles. And so I'm really enjoying seeing her take on those darker roles or deeper roles, I should say, more dramatic roles. Right. And Ryan Gosling has been in that world for the last 15 years. I mean, you had Drive and all these other movies that he's coming out with, the Forest, the Beyond the Pines.
Right. Place Beyond the Pines.
Place Beyond the Pines. Right. There you go. Yeah. And so I think they'll do a great job in it. And my one concern is that I don't know about the music. So why don't you give me your thoughts on that? Mainly because sometimes musicals, the music can really fit and like it seems natural and the sounds are good and you're kind of enjoying that and you feel like you're like along the ride. And then other times it's like, this draining, like when is this song going to be done? I just want to get to the next part of the story.
So, and that's a great thing to bring up. I think the music does fit.
Yeah.
I felt like it did fit. However, it's very repetitive because there is one song in particular that's kind of like their song. Mm-hmm. They don't explicitly say that, but that's what's implied by how many times it's played over and over again.
Yeah.
But it has the opportunity to get really repetitive.
Gotcha.
But I think it was done in a very reserved way, and the music was good. It felt like it fit, especially since it felt classic. Like the music felt classic to me, but it took place in like modern times, you know, and I think that's kind of that blend and mashup. So I think it actually did work out in his favor. Obviously, you'll have to tell me about it after you see it.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
Right. In addition to the music, though, what's really great about this in the way it's filmed, just strictly the cinematography, there's a lot of either really, really great one takes, or very, very well edited multi takes to make them look like one takes.
Yeah.
Regardless, the way that it is all seamlessly brought together is actually it's pretty incredible. It looks really great.
I like that you're breaking into the actual production side of things there a little bit.
Hey, you know what? I get into that stuff sometimes, and I know what happens sometimes. But yeah, it's actually worth noting. It actually looks really good.
Awesome. Well, I am looking forward to checking it out as well. I mean, with Damien, he is at least as far as Whiplash goes, I mean, that was a great film. He did a really good job with that. Interesting that he moved from kind of a film that has a musical sensibility to it and is about that to an actual musical. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where he goes next as well.
Absolutely. So what do we have next, Joel?
Well, next we're going to be talking about a film entitled Manchester by the Sea, and this is directed by Kenneth Lonergan, and it stars a number of people, but the primary actor in this is Casey Affleck, which is interesting because Casey Affleck has done a fair number of kind of, I wouldn't say, secondary type roles in a lot of his films.
Yeah.
He tends
an auxiliary
character. He tends to play second fiddle to his brother when he gets in a lot of projects and stuff. So this is the first time I've seen him personally in a film where he kind of had this standout role. And basically the story is his character plays this. His name is Lee in the film, which was funny because the first couple times they said it, I actually had a really hard time hearing it for some reason. But he plays an uncle whose father passes away due to an ongoing condition, and he's basically given charge of his brother's teenage nephew or his teenage son, which is his nephew, and kind of has to deal with a lot of the issues that are brought up, by the passing of his brother and issues with the boy's life and kind of where they're going to go in the future. And when I went to see this film, it was funny because I texted you and I said, I'm going to go see this film. And you're like, I heard that was really heavy.
Yeah.
And I think that is absolutely the best way to put it. This is a film that is so complex in the simplest way. Right. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but there's a simplicity to the story. It seems very straightforward. I mean, it's basically about a guy dealing with the death of his brother. But there's realism in it because they also tie or reality in it because they tie it into also his backstory, which is kind of this, it almost feels like this slow moving, freight train or something that's slowly getting closer and closer. And at some point they're going to sort of break that and you're going to find out what exactly happened in his path. He plays his character, Casey plays his character where it's, he's almost dead to the world. He's disconnected. Things don't impact him. He has no emotional connection to most things. People, the beginning of the film, you're basically seeing him interacting with these tenants. He's a janitor of sorts. He's kind of a handyman for these different apartment complexes. And he starts hearing these things from people. One of the girls is like attracted to him and he doesn't even say anything about it. And another girl complains and says something really weird to him. And he's starts cursing at her basically. And so he gets chewed out by his boss and he's like, just deal with it,
Yeah.
And so that there's something that's just not quite connecting. He's not having these normal relationships with people. And so as the film progresses, they do a really, really, really good job of showing you these elements of his story and his past and kind of hinting at it, but then ultimately revealing it, I think, at the best time when it is going to hit the hardest way. And the difficult thing with something like that is it is a really dark, I'm not going to spoil anything here, but it is a really dark sort of backstory for him. And I was concerned because when I saw that, I'm like, well, where are you going to go from here?
Right.
This is a crazy thing to happen. It's, about halfway through the film that you finally kind of see what has happened here. How are you going to reach another high point with the script after you've kind of gone to this level with it? So, but they did an amazing job because what it ends up becoming is this story of not just what had happened and it's not just showing you the crazy things that had taken place, but then it becomes about, well, will he be able to overcome this sort of dark demon, if you will, or some dark past that has obviously had a huge impact and has basically created him and turned him into this person that is completely disconnected from the world.
Right.
And so that's the tension of the story there is, will he be able to overcome it? And there was a couple scenes. There's one in particular that is getting close to the end of the film where it's kind of like the moment where he has to like do something,
right,
like say,
right.
is he going to, like, what's going to happen with, his nephew? What's going to happen? And so he opens up like finally, and it's like, it's not much, but it's amazing in the way that it happens.
Yeah.
And so Casey Affleck just kills it on this. It's the first film that I've seen by Amazon Studios as well. I think that they're getting more and more into doing films. I know they've been doing television shows, but it's the first actual film that I think I've sat down and watched, and I was very impressed by this type of one. I'm hoping that it's an indicator that them and other types of groups like Netflix and stuff will be taking on films, because I feel like as well, this kind of a film probably would have been really difficult to get produced and made through like a big studio.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm appreciating the fact that groups like Amazon Studios or Netflix are able to go out there. I wouldn't be surprised if iTunes, if Apple started making films and things like that as well. But I'm just happy that they're going out there and they're making projects like this. So what do you have? Any thoughts on Manchester by the Sea, even though you haven't seen it?
Yeah, so first off, I think it's really, really great that you have something like Amazon Studios being able to do something like that, because from what I'm hearing, and I'm not sure if you're hearing this too, but there's a lot of Oscar buzz around this movie.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And if the little studios, smaller in comparison, I guess I should say, are able to do stuff like this, I think that really opens up the game for a lot of independent filmmakers and things like that to really get attention and some, that kind of notoriety that maybe wouldn't have gotten made at a Warner Brothers or something.
Absolutely. And you've seen, and not to, take the point here too far, but you've definitely seen, I think in the last couple of years, that major studios have taken they do these big giant tentpole productions, hundreds of millions of dollars that they put into these films, huge budgets, huge production, and they make a ton of money on them, but then they're not willing to take risks on the smaller films. And so it left a kind of gap. And for a while there was a lot of independent films that were coming out, small budget, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 indie budget films that were being self-financed and things like that. But they really didn't have distribution because they weren't connected to any major studios or production groups or anything that people knew. And so it's been beautiful to see these groups now taking rise. And I think we're seeing in a small way maybe the future of what film could look like with these studios.
Absolutely. And just kind of to elaborate on what I haven't seen it. So on the outside looking in, it presents itself as a heavy drama, which apparently it is. And I think those films that have that sense of realism in the drama, like, okay, and just that it feels real, that it feels like it's an actually lived in scenario, that it can bring an audience member into it. I think those are the ones that have the capability of impacting you the most emotionally. And those are the types of films that end up being really good, but can almost be like, I've seen it one time, it was great, but I don't know if I want to experience that and live that again emotionally,
That's definitely one of these films.
Right.
It's a great film, but you're not leaving the studio skipping to your car. You're kind of like, oh man, felt like I got punched.
Right, I know. Yeah. And I felt that way with the movie Room. Did you ever see that?
No, I haven't seen Room.
So I love that movie so much, but I walked out of that kind of a wreck. So
oh man,
I know. So I was just
still recovering.
It was really, really good. It was one of my favorite movies that year. But it was, but I feel like that would be this type of movie. But I guess overall picture for me is I'm glad to see the little studio stepping in there to actually take a risk on these types of films.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, so I would personally rate this film. Oh man, if I had to give it a rating, probably close to an A- or so. I think some minor things that I had little gripes with. Overall, the audio and sound design didn't really do anything. It just kind of was normal. And as well as the music, I felt like there was 3 or 4 times where the music went almost bombastic. It went a bit too far, and it was kind of almost overpowering the emotion of the moment. And this is a very real type film. I mean, you feel in a lot of ways what the characters are feeling. There's moments where the characters will literally just kind of walk into a room and just sit down, and then the other one just goes, hey, Like, oh, okay. It's like that's all they're doing. They're just having like a normal conversation, and it sounds weird, but when you get the suspense of the film, of the drama that's happening between the characters, it's more interesting than it sounds. But because of that reality, there's a couple moments where the music comes in, and it almost kind of pulls you out of the realness of that moment.
Gotcha.
So I kind of wish that they'd backed off, maybe just lowered it a couple decibels or something like that, and just kind of let the moment and the emotion of the moment kind of impact you. And I'm thinking maybe that's to do with the main character here, Lee's kind of, depressed and sad. And interestingly enough, I feel like I've spent a season of my life going through what that character was going through during that film. Not anywhere near as dark, but I could relate to what he was going through, and that's for me a sign of a really good film.
So if you want to go watch a biography about Joel's life, then go watch Manchester by the Sea.
Oh my goodness, yeah! Please don't say that, because goodness, if you knew what that guy went through, man.
Just kidding.
Yeah. So that is all for Manchester by the Sea, a review of it. And now we're going to actually finish up our review section and move into our upcoming film talk, where we discuss films that are going to be coming out in the near future, or by the time this comes out, they might already be out.
Right.
Could happen. So, Matt, what do we have first on our upcoming film talk?
Yeah, so first we have A Monster Calls. Now this film, along with the next film we'll talk about later on as well, they're going into wide release this week, which means essentially they've already been released in limited areas, and now they're going to be released nationally, more broad.
Yeah. So sometimes when they release a film, for those of you listening may not understand how that works, sometimes they'll release a film on a limited run to kind of see how it does, see how the market takes the film, and if it does really well, then they'll do like a major release.
Right.
And then other times they'll do a limited release for like festivals, or specifically for like Oscars,
award season,
Academy Awards and everything. They'll run it in specific markets early so they can get it in for a nomination, and then they do a more major release.
Right.
So
going back here to A Monster Calls, I'm actually really excited about this.
Okay.
I'm getting similar vibes that this is going to be kind of a heavy movie. The trailer paints this picture, and I'm not entirely sure if this is entirely accurate of what the movie is fully about, but essentially the description of the movie is a boy seeks the help of a tree monster to cope with his single mom's terminal illness. Now, his mom is played by Felicity Jones, which we just saw in Rogue One.
Yep.
And Liam Neeson is the voice of the tree monster.
Ooh.
So
it's a great voice to have.
Right. So what I'm gathering from this trailer is that the tree monster is not really a actual tree monster. It's more of a figurative, metaphorical tree monster that this kid is using as a coping mechanism, as the description portrays it to be. So there's a lot of really cool visuals where this monster is like helping him out in a lot of situations. And so and he's just really having a hard time. So I know that with his mom's battling of cancer, and I think that's really going to play into the emotional heaviness of this. But I think it's also going to be relatable on that level, especially for people that are just dealing with loss in their life, just in general, not necessarily with the cancer or whatever it may be. And it looks visually stunning. J.A. Bayona is the director of this, and he's actually really well known kind of he did The Impossible, he did The Orphan.
Orphanage.
The Orphanage, that's right.
Yeah.
Which is actually pretty good.
That was a freaky movie. It's a great film, yeah.
So, and I think that he can lend his horror sensibilities to something like this for its benefit. Sigourney Weaver's in it also. I don't know. I just really like the team up on this. And on a side note, I'm excited that J.A. Bayona is taking on the Jurassic World sequel.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I think if he can lend his horror sensibilities to this as much as I think he's going to that as well, I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to check it out as well. I don't think I'm maybe as excited as you are. Not because I feel like it's going to be a bad movie. I'm just not as big a fan personally, I think, of that suspense type genre. I do like some suspense films, but I don't know. This doesn't float towards horror, so it still kind of falls in my category of
it's more drama.
It's more drama, suspense kind of a thing. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that, and it'll be a good outing, I think, for the director, or a taste of maybe what you can get, like you said, with the upcoming Jurassic World movie. And they've definitely got some Sigourney Weaver, Felicity Jones did, in my opinion, great job with Rogue One.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be good to see her kind of back on the screen so quickly. She's probably going to have a ton of movies coming out now,
right?
Because of the success of that. And there's a kid actor here, Lewis McDougall, and so I don't know a lot about this guy. I do know that he was in Pan, and he played Nibs in Pan. It's a kind of not a major role. It's like one of the side characters, I'm pretty sure. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how he does. I think if the film is obviously really kind of about his perspective and his take on things, it's going to rely a lot on how he does kind of with that role and how the director does with him on that. So it can be notoriously known for a lot of directors and people that it's difficult to work with kids. And you would say, oh, well, he had experience working with kids in the orphanage, but if you go and watch the orphanage, you're like, well, maybe that's not the case. I don't want to spoil anything there. But, so it'll be interesting to see how he does working with kids. It'll be interesting to see kind of how the team comes together, but I'm excited for it as well. I'll probably go see it in theaters if I get the chance, but it's not on my must go see right now type films.
It's on mine. Let me just say that. I'm excited for it. It's also based off a novel, which I didn't actually know till recently. So kind of cool to see that. I might be inspired to read it later on. But what do we have next, J-Dog?
Well, we've got an interesting film coming up next. And for whatever reason, these types of films just really get me. This film is called The Founder, and it is directed by John Lee Hancock. It stars Michael Keaton, Nick Offerman, and John Carroll Lynch. And the IMDb sort of synopsis for this film is basically struggling salesman Ray Kroc meets Mac and Dick McDonald, co-operators of a burger restaurant in the 1950s South Carolina. Have you heard of this burger joint, Matt?
I have not. The two...
I'll give you a hint. It's their last name has something to do with it.
Oh, okay, McDonald.
Yeah, so Ray Kroc is played by Michael Keaton here, and I'm a big fan of Michael Keaton.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, he did an amazing job with Birdman, and he's kind of been doing this resurgence into the kind of the popular world of film once again. I liked him all the way back when he did Batman. He was one of my favorite Batmans that, obviously he's the first, so there's going to be something there to that. But I felt like he did a great job overall with the difficulty of that role is balancing between Bruce Wayne and Batman, trying to be this serious, somber kind of guy, but also this kind of pretty playboy type character.
Right.
And so I thought he did a great job, and he really set the bar pretty high for people to come after him.
Yeah.
And then, he kind of faded out after, he did Beetlejuice and he did a bunch of other stuff. Beetlejuice, he's great in Beetlejuice again. And so he did a bunch of roles that he kind of faded out. And then recently he with, Birdman, obviously this critical kind of success film, he came out. And the film itself, so I mentioned that I love these kinds of films. That just always gets me when it's these films that are kind of based on a true story, if you will. They're kind of biographical in nature, but it's also dramatic, and it's like a historical reference point to something that actually happened. And so I love watching films like that. It's almost like in a weird way watching a biography, but a more interesting reenactment scenario for it. And so it looks, just based upon the trailers, it's got a really good kind of dynamic tension between Michael Keaton's character and then Nick Offerman and John Carroll Lynch, who play basically Mac and Dick McDonald, who are the founders of the McDonald's retro franchise. And so Ray comes in there, he sees what they're doing, and then I guess he goes and, based on a true story, he goes and he takes this idea and then he begins to franchise it. And I don't want to spoil anything too much on the show or on the movie, but it's interesting to see, basically, if you're familiar kind of with the story of how this actually took place and where this went, there's some real dramatic tension there, because McDonald's is like this American landmark. Right, you know what I mean? Yeah. We know McDonald's. You drive down the road for 5 minutes and you see a McDonald's, and then 5 minutes more and there's another McDonald's. I've been around the world and I've seen them.
Abroad. Japan, it's everywhere.
So it's kind of this staple of America, and you would think that this would be something that probably would have started with a real strong, there must have been some team of engineers that got together and said we're going to make the perfect burger restaurant with the perfect franchise, and just
right.
And so there's elements with the story of the McDonald brothers, basically, of them wanting to create something new and different, but not necessarily seeing what they had in their hands, and not really seeing, and as an entrepreneur myself, that's a cool thing for me, is seeing something in a new way and seeing that, the way that I could take that and potentially make that very successful.
Right.
But then they end up, after doing that, not really truly seeing the benefit. So they see like a half of the picture, and then you see another guy comes in and really kind of takes that on and turns it into even bigger and even better. And so in a way, it's kind of an American story. It's a kind of an American story of like success and entrepreneurship, but it also can kind of show some of the corporate greed side of things, of people being maybe more wrapped up in their own version of success and their own ideals and everything like that. And so I'm just really interested as well, to see Michael Keaton, to see what he's going to be doing with it. I know Michael Lee Hancock has done some really obviously big movies as well in the past. He did, Saving Mr. Banks, The Blind Side, which, both of those movies did really well. I mean, Sandra Bullock with The Blind Side winning an Academy Award, and Saving Mr. Banks was actually a surprise for me. I did not expect to enjoy that as much as I did. So this is a director that's kind of on my radar, and one that I'm kind of like excited to see where he's going. It feels like he's taking on better and better projects at the moment.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have any thoughts regarding The Founder?
Yeah, it actually looks very, very interesting because the trailer doesn't go into it fully, at least the one that I watched, but it does have that sense of, all right, is what he's doing shady almost? Yeah. It kind of has that sense of like, I don't know if what he's doing is entirely right. I understand what he's trying to do, but there's some like seemingly shady stuff happening with how he's, going about, starting this thing. But I think Michael Keaton's a perfect person. He can do that. He can play the villain. He can play, the good guy. I think he's just one of those guys that is so out there that he can do whatever he wants, and he can also bring a certain level of heft just to whatever role he plays. Yeah. It doesn't matter what he's in. I use this example all the time, but the movie Need for Speed with Aaron Paul that came out 2 years ago was not a good movie, but Michael Keaton was arguably maybe the best part of that movie because it's just this crazy like Michael Keatonisms, and his Beetlejuice and his, like that's kind of like kind of who he is and kind of like what he brings to a role. And
he has a quiet intensity. Right. It's like it's like this fire that at any moment could just snap and he's going to blow up and stab somebody. Right. Which would made him really good for a lot of these roles. Batman, where he's playing this character, like, again, that has two sides to himself. And you'd realize it probably would have to take somebody that's a little bit not just quite mentally perfectly stable in order to be willing to dress up and fight crime like Batman, but also be a normal guy.
There's something else there. And Michael Keaton's perfect for that. I mean, like you said earlier, we're seeing him in a lot of things now more recently that are prominent. You have the Birdman side, you have The Founder coming up, you have Spotlight. Yeah. And I think it's kind of cool. He's making the crossover into some like just mainstream fun films. I mean, he's coming up, he's going to be the Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
So we'll see what kind of craziness he can bring to that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this as well.
Well, yeah, I'm really excited as well to see what Nick Offerman and John Carroll Lynch have to offer. I know Nick Offerman has kind of been on I think he's trying to break more into kind of bigger films, and I think for him this is a really good film to kind of break into that deeper, darker type project, or maybe not darker, but more dramatic type work. Right. He did Parks and Rec, and he was super successful in that. And then as well for John Carroll Lynch, who, he's been, again, kind of a side character in a lot of films. He kind of always plays that like secondary character. Usually that ends up bad things happening to them for some reason. Yeah. I think that's just for whatever reason, the kind of roles that he ends up in. And so it'll be good to see kind of how they all play off of each other. The trailer for it didn't share too much, but I did read, and this is probably the last thing we'll say about it, but I did read a really interesting interview that they did of Michael Keaton, and he's talking about his role in this, and they talked about how they're not trying to portray his role, Ray, as like necessarily the antagonist or necessarily as like, a good guy or a bad guy, basically the protagonist or antagonist. He's kind of just trying to say, this is the role that he took and this is what happened. And they're trying to give a realistic portrayal of the events and the way they transpired. And I think there is a reality to that, I mean, there is people out there that will probably just do something evil for evil's sake. But a lot of times, especially in business, you find people that, they do things for maybe the right reason. They want to find success or be successful so they can help other people, but they do things in selfish ways so much that it ends up hurting other people too much. And so it'll be really interesting to see kind of where they go with the character. That'll be really interesting to see if he ends up being more of a sympathetic character or more of a character that you kind of love to hate sort of a character.
Yeah. Definitely.
So that is going to finish up our talk on The Founder, as well as our conversation about the upcoming films that we're really looking forward to seeing. So, Matt, let's head into now our TV talk, or our tube talk, as we like to call it.
Right.
Matt, what do we have going on in this coming time for television? We're going to be talking about spring and shows that are going to be coming out there. You've got a couple on the docket. What are we going to be talking about first?
Right. So first of all, I'm really excited about this because this is the first time we're really diving into some TV stuff.
It is, yeah.
And it's
People are wondering. They're
right,
asking,
it's really
what
cool.
about TV?
People are like, what's happening, guys?
Yeah.
So it's really cool. We're going into the spring season here where, the fall season of 2016 is wrapping up. 2017 spring is starting back up. And there's a lot coming out, actually. A lot of new and a lot of continuations of some other series that have already been going. But I want to start off kind of on the retro side of things because they're actually bringing back a couple of shows that I watched like from season to season live as it aired on TV, which like doesn't even happen now
Not
these
at
days.
all. Everybody's on Netflix.
I know. So
Pre-recorded.
24 Legacy, they're bringing back.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of 24. As much as it kind of faltered in its final few seasons, I'm just a huge fan of it altogether. Now the big issue with this is it's not a Kiefer Sutherland driven series. It's he's not the main guy going forward in this time. So
which is a huge difference. So my experience with 24 is basically I watched one episode and because I had a good friend at the time who was just loved 24. Check it out. He's like, check it out. So I finally watched an episode and they blow up an atomic bomb. And it was like, okay, well, I feel like that was the best and worst episode I could have watched of the show. And so I kind of stopped watching after that. It's all downhill for me.
So here's the thing. It's a show that I felt like progressively got better and peaked in its 5th season.
Okay.
And then it kind of went downhill from there and then started getting better towards the end of the 7th season going into the 8th. And then the half season they did when they brought it back.
It's like 12 hours.
Right, exactly. It's like half. It's called 12, not 24.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm pretty excited about it. Corey Hawkins is going to be doing the main bit. He's going to be doing the main character, I guess I should say.
Okay.
Now there is talk of Kiefer coming in kind of a little bit, and I don't know if that's just to get people to watch the show or not.
I feel like that's part of it.
But here's the thing. I've invested so much of my life into 24 that I am going to watch this show regardless. Now, I don't want to, stay on that too long, but I'm excited to check it out. I kind of like you, and you say this all the time. I'm a little bit hesitant because I'm not.
Do say that? You know me so well.
I know, and I'm not entirely sure what to expect, but I'm going to invest the time. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
The other thing that's coming back, and this felt like it faltered more than 24 did in its second
a little farther.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's Prison Break. Now Wentworth Miller, after Prison Break, didn't really do anything. In fact, he hasn't really done a lot of anything. To the extent of having his own TV show going, and they're coming back. And spoiler alert here. Well, actually, I'll save that. It's going to be interesting to see how they make this happen with what happens with this character.
Yeah.
So,
because Prison broke, right?
It broke, man.
It broke, man. It's gone.
They broke out of a lot of things through the
Yeah.
course of 4 seasons, and honestly, the first season's great. Second season's all right. Third season's like half a season because that's when the writer's strike happened back in the day.
Yeah.
Fourth season is it was hard to get through.
This might be a case of Prison broker.
Right.
Yeah.
Prison broken. Prison's broken. But anyway, it's coming back. It looks good. If they can capture the magic of the first season, I'm all about it. But I'm going to be like you again. I'm hesitant on this because of the way that the previous seasons ended up. It's not like Breaking Bad. We're like, wow, that was like the perfect ending, and you're like, okay, if they bring it back, okay, I'm sure they have something awesome because we have that trust with them. But the way that the writers left us at the end of these seasons, I'm not entirely.
Yeah, we've had a bit of a resurgence. They've been bringing back a lot of shows. Like they brought MacGyver back. They even tried to bring recently Heroes back, which I didn't even give that a chance, unfortunately.
Flopped, I guess.
But I know that they're doing this a lot, and I guess those examples. Obviously, I don't know how MacGyver's doing right now, but Heroes flopped. It shows me that some of it might be the legitimately, hey, maybe we have a good idea, but there's also definitely a studio component of, hey, we just know this franchise made a lot of money, and we want to see if we can make a lot of money with it again.
Right. We're living in the day and age where if a show gets canceled, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be canceled, because it could potentially be picked up by another studio, whether it be a Netflix or an Amazon. We've seen that happen a lot. I know
Community is a great example.
Right.
To everywhere, pretty
The Killing.
much.
There's a ton of different things.
Netflix is picking up shows and restarting them. Fuller House and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a market for it, and I think that studios do recognize that, and that's why stuff like this is happening. Maybe they could do that with Lost, and really.
Wow, they'd have to start at the beginning with Lost, because I think they really screwed the pooch after about 4 seasons. When
so the ending, I think it works for me, but
the
the last 10 minutes I had such a bad time with. So if they could figure that out, all right, guys, you can do that. That would be great. If you're listening, awesome. But yeah, so that's really it. We'll see what happens with these blasts from the past, if you will, going forward. But the next one that I want to talk about is a show coming up called Legion, and essentially, and here's a synopsis. You have this guy named David Haller.
Let's call him Holler,
aka Legion. He's a haunted man, essentially, with the power beyond comprehension. His power does not come free, though, but at a steep cost of his mind, potentially insanity. Basically plagued by a number of split personalities.
Yeah.
But in each one of those personalities controls a different aspect of his power. So here's the thing that's cool about this. This this show actually takes place within like Fox's like X-Men universe.
Expanded universe.
Right. And this is the first time that we're seeing this outside of the cinematic world.
Right.
And I'm really excited about it. I'm excited by the what it looks like. The trailer looks good. In addition to that, though, Dan Stevens, I think he's really, really great. He was actually first time I saw him was in Downton Abbey.
Yeah.
And then after that was The Guest, which was kind of an action thriller, which I thought was actually pretty good and showed his range a little bit. And I don't know. The marketing is pretty vague up to this point, but I think it looks really good. I know Aubrey Plaza's in it as well.
Yeah.
And we'll see what she can kind of lend to that. But I don't know. Have you seen or heard anything about this?
Yeah, I saw the original trailer for it. I would say that I'm somewhat like excited to see it. It kind of is going towards this realm of almost like science fiction-y kind of, mystical powers type thing. So it's like it's a suspense action type show.
Right.
So I would say that I would probably be watching this for sure if it weren't for the fact that I've just got probably so many other shows right now that kind of fit that genre.
It's crazy.
Pretty much every channel and every network is coming out with some sort of like action-y sci-fi type show, and they've all got their own tilts and their own. You've got the OA, and then you've got what is it, the Honda 100 and everything. Yeah. So you've got all these different channels and all these different shows. So I'll probably give it a chance. I'll probably give it a look. It is interesting, like you said, to see how it kind of connects in with the expanded universe that they're doing there. And I think Dan Stevens as well is a great actor. So I'll probably give it the good old, watch the pilot or watch the first couple episodes and see how things go from there. I mean, I know Dan is also involved with Beauty and the Beast. He's going to be the Beast in Beauty and the Beast. So he's obviously going at a bit of a high point for him. He's kind of breaking into some bigger roles. And so hopefully this was a wise choice for him, and he's going to break into an even better echelon of acting credibility.
Right. And yeah, I think it's going to be really cool to just see it in the context of just the X-Men universe. Pretty
Absolutely.
Cool. And next, kind of along the same lines, is Iron Fist, which is going to be it's another Netflix Marvel series, essentially. And the biggest thing with Iron Fist is that this is going to help finally complete the individual story plot to essentially for the next Marvel iteration of the Avengers, which is going to be called The Defenders.
Gotcha.
Which is encompassing Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Daredevil.
Yeah.
So they're all essentially, Marvel is trying to conquer the cinematic realm, which they definitely are if you're looking at DC as competition. And then right now they're making a run for the tube, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Where DC has a great television lineup, but I think Marvel is owning the Netflix and world as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Iron Fist looks like it's a lot of the same. Luke Cage, I felt a little bit. I liked it, but not as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
Jessica Jones, I liked it maybe a little bit more than Luke Cage. And I would say Daredevil, I probably like the most so far. There's a lot of different aspects to that I really like, but I'm curious to see what Iron Fist brings to it. The trailer looks good. I want to see how it all comes together. And have you seen anything for Iron Fist?
I haven't seen anything for Iron Fist.
Okay.
So this is actually brand new for me in the most part. I will probably give it a look. I gave, Jessica Jones a try. I gave Luke Cage a try. Watched both of those single episodes.
Right.
And then I was like, well, I should probably keep watching that. It didn't do anything, I think, on a gut level when I first watched both shows. That really just intrigued me and made me feel like I'm excited to kind of see where their story is going.
Right.
Luke Cage, I felt like was just simple and a bit kind of predictable in a way. And with Jessica Jones, I felt almost a little like it was like a little manipulative, almost with the way that her story kind of played at the end. Especially, it just didn't make sense why they like had this. I don't want to spoil anything for the first episode, but so I was intrigued and I'm like, I should probably keep watching, but it just didn't hit me kind of right at that moment. I started watching another show, which is on HBO called The Leftovers.
Right.
And that kind of hit me really hard from the first episode. And so I kind of just continued on.
Yeah, it's all about prioritizing.
Exactly. You've only got so much time in a day. And if you watched every show that was coming out, we would never have time to even do a podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'll probably check out the first episode is what I'm saying and see how it goes.
Yeah, it's good. Definitely check it out because they're setting it up for the small screen Avengers, essentially. And then also want to touch on real quick, Sherlock. We have the fourth series or season. I think they call it series in the UK.
In the UK land.
Right. So
they call it a series.
That actually already started.
Yeah.
First episode aired. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet. The next two come out in the next couple of weeks here. But yeah, I really, really love this. This is kind of my introduction into Benedict Cumberbatch as a whole.
Yep.
Very, very smart. And the amount of being an actor, I know you can appreciate this too, but the amount and the speed and the intensity in which he says his lines and what he says is incredible to me. I've grown accustomed to it a little bit more, so it's not as impressive, while at the same time it still is impressive. And I think they're doing a really good job at keeping some of the mystery and intrigue going along. The third season opened up a whole new door for some things. I don't want to spoil anything, but we'll see how it plays out because it's not quite to the extent of Prison Break, but I feel like they left some things open that I'm not entirely sure how they're going to resolve.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything on it?
I've not. I'm actually a little behind on my Sherlock. I've watched the first two series and enjoyed both of them. The thing is, I've actually read all of the, the stories. And,
look at you.
Yeah. So I have, a friend of mine purchased them for me a long time ago, and I'm like, I should probably give them a read. And so I've read all the different Sherlock Holmes stories, and I'm kind of familiar with, generally how the different plots of the different episodes are kind of tied indirectly or directly to episodes of the actual writing story. So when I saw Moriarty showing up and kind of the way that they were playing that out, and I was kind of like, as far as the series goes, to me, that was kind of like the book series. That was kind of like the end point for me of there was, obviously the same thing happens, but there's kind of an ongoing adventures of Sherlock Holmes. But I didn't, after that whole thing had happened in the book series with Moriarty, basically, I kind of felt like, okay, well, that's a natural kind of fitting end and maybe give a little bit of like a epilogue type thing. But then they kept going and the stories didn't get as good for me. They were kind of like, once you've gone to the point where it's like, death is on the line like that and they probably died, it's like, how do you kind of reach another big point,
right?
And so it kind of weirdly did the same thing with the show, and I kind of lost interest a little bit. But I do want to give it another chance. I mean, it was an amazingly well put together show. I really enjoyed the cinematography and action and the dynamics and the acting between Martin and Benedict. I mean, the two guys are just play off each other perfectly. They're a great pair. So yeah, I'll probably give it a check out. I got to catch up on my last series, though, third series.
It's really good. So check that out. Let us know if you've been watching it too. Shoot us an email. Just, let us know what you've been thinking of that so far.
That would be awesome.
So that wraps up our segment of Tube Talk or TV Talk, whatever you want to call it. I like Tube Talk. Yeah,
to be clear about that.
So next, I just want to spend a couple minutes here talking about a news item that's actually kind of interesting. What's going on with this news story here?
Yeah, so there's a rumor floating around, and at this point, I will emphasize it's just rumor,
speculation.
But speculation that Woody Harrelson is actually being potentially pegged to be cast as Han Solo's mentor character in the 2018 spin-off film.
Wow.
Yeah, for the Han Solo. So as you know, Star Wars is doing like a normal like episode, and then they're doing like spin-off individual films for some of the characters. And so we just had Rogue One, which was the sort of the mid-quel, if you will, between prequel and original series. And now we're doing a Han Solo potential spin-off. So what are your thoughts on him? Woody Harrelson there?
I'm actually really excited at this prospect. And if you think about it, it makes sense. And let me tell you why. I think we know Han Solo to be a scoundrel, a little bit shady, you know?
Yeah.
And when you look at Woody Harrelson, he is a scoundrel and he is a little bit shady, like just in everything that he's done. And he can play it perfectly. And I think if that's going to be his mentor, then I think it makes absolute sense. And I think Woody Harrelson's been on a roll, honestly, in just a lot of the things that he's done.
It's true.
And it looks like he's playing something similar in the new War for the Planet of the Apes coming up as well.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. Do you have any initial thoughts?
I'm a bit hesitant. I mean, surprise, surprise. I don't have any problem necessarily with them looking to him to potentially do the role. I think Woody Harrelson for me can be a really good actor. I mean, a lot of the films he's been in, I mean, he's done humor and he's done dramatic, more on the humor side of things. Yeah. And I think if you look at his character and the way that he acts in a lot of his films, there always tends to be a little bit of kind of like a goofy, kind of humorous side to his character. So that could fit in the Star Wars universe. I think it's really going to depend upon the director and the story and the way that it's been written. I will say that I don't see him doing it. I'm not looking at Star Wars and thinking Woody Harrelson, his face isn't popping up to me. I would almost rather see some sort of more kind of somber, like serious mentor that maybe he could play off of Han Solo. Like, I don't want to see like, well, Han Solo's bad. Imagine how bad his mentor must have been, you know?
Right.
I would have almost rather see like, well, Han Solo's kind of a person unto himself, but had this really good mentor that kind of grew him. So it really also will depend upon how they write him and direct him. So that's kind of my thoughts.
We'll see what happens. Again, it's speculation, so we'll just take it from there.
We'll take it from there. Awesome. Well, that is going to be all for us today on the podcast. We just want to remind you here at the end to if you get a chance, definitely check out our Facebook page. We post a ton of really cool stuff, news articles and items and different things, as well as get you information. You can find that at facebook.com/Real Review Media. And again, real spelled REEL, like film reel. And then additionally, like Matt said, if you got any questions, thoughts about anything we've talked about, we'd love to hear from you. Get your input. You can email us at realreviewmedia@gmail.com. And definitely encourage you guys as well. Get signed up for that contest. We're going to be running that throughout the rest of January. Chance to go to the movies with, who knows, some friend. You can make a new friend.
Yeah.
Take them to the movies.
Right.
$50. Takes you you get at least 2 tickets and maybe a popcorn.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So awesome. Thanks for joining us, everybody. And it's been real.
It's been real.